We know the pilot asked to divert up to 38,000 feet because of the weather conditions. Does that suggest anything to you?
Do you know, at this stage, it really doesn't. That's a fairly routine thing for a pilot to do. The weather in the Java Sea was not unseasonably stormy. There were several planes in the vicinity of the Indonesia AirAsia flight. So at this stage, we really don't know anything further.
Looking at the map, you can see obviously this is a flight predominantly, a short flight, but one over the sea. What is going to happen now? How, and especially following the disasters earlier this year, what do we know about how this could be tracked down? What sort of locator beacons would have been in operation here?
Well, like any aircraft, it will have locator beacons if it has in fact come to some sort of calamity. The Indonesian and indeed Singaporean authorities are searching, and there will be no.
If this sounds eerily familiar, it's because just 10 months ago, as Martin was saying, another flight in the same area of the world, MH370, went missing. So we decided to look at these two flights, these two airlines, and see where the similarities and comparisons ended. Let's bring up a map and start. Now, MH370 departed from Kuala Lumpur on its way to Beijing in early March. And you see that just towards the upper part of your screen there. AirAsia flight departing from Surabaya, Indonesia to Singapore, right there at the bottom of your screen. Now, both disappeared from radars and made no further communication after that moment. These two airplanes are slightly different, with MH370 having more room for passengers, 239 passengers versus 162 passengers and crew on AirAsia. Also, both of these flights, if you bring up that map one more time, lost contact relatively soon after departing. MH370 lost contact at about 1:19. QZ8501 losing contact at about 6:17 this morning. And that is pretty much where the similarities and comparisons end there. You may be wondering about that flight, MH370. Where is it? Has anyone spotted any of the debris, any wreckage? Well, we know in August that the Australian government reached out to a Dutch company to help with the next phase of the search, this so-called undersea search. And we know that the Malaysian government is also playing a big role in this, both earmarking a lot of money, Martin, $60 million from each government to go forward with this search. Now, they had an optimistic estimation that they would continue, or finish, I should say, their scouring of this priority zone in the Indian Ocean by May of next year, 2015. But that was only if they didn't have any technical problems or hiccups with the equipment that they were using. That turned out not to be the case. They are having some problems, so that has made delays, that has pushed back the search. Now another plane in the same part of the world, Martin, missing.
I want to let you know that we have just heard from the U.S. Navy saying that their 7th Fleet, that is in the Pacific region, is standing ready to assist in the search for this missing airline that's been gone for about 26 hours now off radar. They have not, there has not been a request for help from the U.S. Navy, but the 7th Fleet, again, standing ready to assist as needed. In aviation circles, these are dreaded words about any airplane. Status unknown. Too often that means something has gone terribly wrong. The status of a Malaysian passenger jet right now unknown. It is about, as I said, 26 hours since they last lost contact with that Airbus 320. It just dropped off the radar. Reporters on board search planes over the Java Sea say crews are flying and they are looking. This is mainly a visual search on the water and from the air right now. Also unknown, the fate of the 162 people on board, passengers and crew members who took off on what was supposed to be a short flight, just about 2 hours to Singapore, and never made it. One thing that we do know is that the captain of that flight wanted to adjust his altitude, wanted to go higher to dodge some bad weather, wanted to go up to 38,000 feet. Commercial airliner that disappeared from air traffic control screens not even 24 hours ago. As of right now, that airplane is still missing. Here is what we know. It is an Airbus 320 operated by AirAsia. It was en route from Indonesia to Singapore when all contact was lost. One of the last things the pilot said was that the weather was not good. The visual search for the plane stopped overnight, but now dawn is breaking and search planes are getting back into the air. They'll start combing the area where the plane was last known over the Java Sea. Here is the human factor. There are 162 souls on that plane, most of them from Indonesia, among them 18 children, 1 infant. People around the world are watching and waiting for any word from the search and rescue crews. And during his Sunday Mass today at the Vatican, Pope Francis, prayed for those crews and for the families of the people who are on board and who are missing. This plane was last tracked over the Java Sea. Take a look at this. We're going to pull up a map for you to show you the part of the world that we're talking about here. The plane took off from Surabaya, that is the second biggest city in Indonesia. Its destination, Singapore, just a 2-hour flight away. It never made it, though. Let me read you a statement we just got, this coming out of a press conference in Jakarta, Indonesia. Officials there are saying, the chief of Indonesia's National Search and Rescue Agency, saying they believe Flight 8501, quote, is on the bottom of the sea. Again, the chief of the National Search and Rescue Agency saying they believe Flight 8501 is at the bottom of the sea. Let me go straight to Andrew Stevens, who is there tracking it live for us. Andrew, how do they know this early on?
Well, this is a press conference coming from Jakarta, Bobby. I'm down here in Surabaya. So the short answer is we don't know yet what they're using and what information they have that we don't have to be able to say something like that. But obviously there has been a search. There's a search yesterday when the plane first disappeared, and it's been ongoing now for 3 or 4 hours. Today. What's happening where I am is that the families of the passengers and the crew are being briefed by AirAsia officials. That's a closed-door briefing. I saw about 60 or 70 members of families sitting there listening to the briefing. We haven't yet been able to ascertain what they've been told, because that meeting broke up literally just a few minutes ago, and a press conference here has begun. And at the moment, they've just been talking about the assets that have been deployed from several countries, obviously, many vessels on the sea, plus air reconnaissance flights as well. So that is the focus of this press conference so far. But if that's a very, very key point, obviously, because it's admission that it has crashed in this area, and now it becomes just a matter of time to find the black boxes, to find the emergency beacons to locate the plane.
In just a few hours, it will be daybreak off the coast of Indonesia, and that's when the full search operation for missing AirAsia Flight 8501 will resume. Let's bring in aviation expert Dan Hampton. He's a retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, and we're also joined by CNN aviation analyst and former Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Transportation, Mary Schiavo. As you point out, she now works for a law firm that represents victims and families after airline disasters. Colonel Hampton, let me start with you. You've flown more than 150 combat missions, so I'm sure you've had to react to a lot of volatile situations in the air. Shortly before air traffic control lost contact with AirAsia, the pilot asked for a deviation due to weather. Does that give you any indication of what could have happened next?
You know, it really doesn't, Martin, and I don't want to sound vague here, but there's the information is so scarce right now that I don't really want to leap to any conclusions. It's very normal in any kind of flying, military or civilian, especially commercial airline pilots, to deviate for weather. They don't want to spill people's coffee. It's not safe, that sort of thing. And for the kind of flying I used to do, it was just good practice to avoid it when you could. So the fact that he deviated, doesn't mean much to me. He was trying to go higher, which means the air is a little bit smoother, that sort of thing. At this point, and as Les pointed out earlier, I don't want to just focus entirely on the weather. It seems that that's probably a contributing factor, but there's a lot of other things that could have happened here.
And I don't know, I didn't get to read in, but have you ever had an opportunity to work search and rescue and efforts to try and locate aircraft that have been down?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you recall from and I don't want to draw a parallel to the Malaysian incident, 10 months ago, but that sort of effort is something that they're going to have to do here, although it should be a little bit easier because there was a good IFF hit on this aircraft. They were in constant radar contact, and they pretty much know where this airplane went down, unlike the one 10 months before. So the search and rescue effort should be a little bit simpler, weather permitting.
And just looking down, though, on the water from an aircraft is not necessarily a perfect view of everything, is it?
No, it's definitely not. It's a lot harder than people think. Unfortunately, it's not like a bathtub. But commercial airliners all have emergency locator transmitters on them, that sort of thing. And the fact that nobody's been talking about this yet with this airplane means to me either they're not releasing that information or something else possibly could have happened. Also, the fact that the pilots didn't make a distress call, at least one that we know about at this time, is also a little bit telling in my mind, because they were either too busy doing what they were doing, dealing with a problem to make a call, which is normal, or this is something else, and time will tell, unfortunately.
Mary, let me ask you this. Assuming that they will find some debris or find some portion of this aircraft, what could that tell them?
Well, any piece of debris, even the smallest piece from the plane, will allow them to do the drift patterns and work back to find where the rest of the plane might be and where to put submersibles in to find the black boxes. So even the small, one seat cushion could be a huge break in finding this aircraft. And unless it'd be very rare for it not to break up if it hit the water, it would be very rare for it not to break up, particularly from this altitude, because it was at cruising altitude. And I've worked a couple cases where they have fallen from that altitude, and it's, it's a big, the impact is breaks up the plane.
Mm-hmm. You heard Dan make reference to how difficult it can be to search from the air when trying to find debris. Is that also a problem that you're aware of? I mean, that it's not always easy, even though you're flying over it, to see things so clearly.
Right, on Air France 447, they had the coordinates. I mean, the plane, that particular aircraft, an Airbus, but an Airbus 340, was sending the messages with the automatic system status update messaging system. And even knowing exactly where it occurred, it took a while for them to find the wreckage. They have to, particularly in stormy weather, and they have to apply the drift patterns. And some agencies and some forces are better at using the drift pattern data and calculating back where the drifted pieces would have impacted the water than others. So, it's a lot of work to actually find it, but as everyone in the world learned from Malaysia 370, the time is ticking away, and fortunately it doesn't appear that they're losing the 4 days they lost in Malaysia 370 when the Malaysian military, neglected to tell them they were looking in the wrong place. So hopefully there will be no misconnects there, and they will understand that you can't say the coordinates of a civilian aircraft are a national security secret when lives are at stake.
Dan, real quick, Dan, before I let you go, have you ever been caught up in weather where you thought, holy cow, I'm not sure I'm going to make it through this?
Oh, many times. I went from 35,000 feet to 800 feet one day during the last Gulf War. It's not good, and you're talking about a fighter jet with an afterburner, which unfortunately an airliner doesn't have. So yeah, it can be a problem, but again, we don't know that that's what happened, so I don't want to speculate too much.
No, but it's a staggering thought just to hear what you went through. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hampton and Mary Schiavo. Always a pleasure to have you as well.
They're searching an area roughly the size of California. An early sighting of debris and oil has now been discounted. But whatever hope remains is tempered with a reluctant acceptance.
We pray for that, but we realize to the worst thing that maybe happen.
It's emerged that the pilot of the missing flight requested permission to fly higher to avoid bad weather. The request was initially refused due to heavy air traffic. 5 minutes later, flight QZ8501 vanished. Although the search continues, Indonesian authorities are not expecting to find any survivors.
If the target is on land, it's easier than if it's in an underwater location. But our presumption now, based on the evaluation of the coordinates we've received, suggests that the aircraft is under the sea.
The airline's chief executive insists the focus should be on the passengers' families and nothing else.
Until we have a full investigation, we know what went wrong, that we really can't speculate. We don't really want to speculate until we find the aircraft. We know what went wrong, then we'll look into it and see, what we need to improve, if we need to improve. But it's speculation at the moment, so it's premature to talk at the moment.
Some who were meant to have boarded the missing flight are counting their blessings.
We were supposed to be on the flight yesterday, the 28th, yes, because there was a relative having a wedding, and the wedding ended quite late. So we were thinking no, just postpone one day. So thanks God, we were supposed to be on that flight on the 28th. And it's eerie.
But undeterred, travellers at airports in the region are boarding other AirAsia flights today and say they've no reason to doubt the carrier's competence.
I think it will be safe. I see no reason not to travel with them now, although I am curious how many people will turn up for this flight.
So the search continues, and if the missing flight has indeed crashed into the Java Sea, oceanographers point out that its floor is reachable by divers, and quickly. Enda Brady, Sky News.